Who is the Dagda in Irish myth? This video goes out to a Patreon supporter who wants to know more about the deity. First and foremost, the Dagda is a god of fertility and the daylight sky. The name Dagda would seem to mean the good god, but ultimately means the bright or shining god. He is almost certainly the continuation of the Proto-Indo-European sky father Dyeus, and in this he shares certain things with gods like Dyeus or Jupiter, who also incorporate this role. We see in myth he is associated both with the sky, the weather, the seasons, his harp, which affects the seasons and the emotions of humans. He regulates the seasons, which bring the cycle of life and death, just as his staff brings life with one end and death with the other. The Dagda is said to be a great worker of miracles who saw to the weather and the harvest. He is sometimes called the Ollathair, meaning the Great Father, and it is clear why, because he is ultimately the source of life and material abundance. This title is reminiscent of Zeus, father of gods and men, Jupiter, and Odin, though it's less clear why Odin has this title. He has a particular association with fire and the sun. He is sometimes called Aed, meaning fire. Was said to have made the sun appear in the sky for 9 months, and he is credited with banishing the sea from the plain of Merhemna. One of the names the daughter of Indech gives to him is the regeneration of dry land, and another is the great father of being. He is also father of fire and light-related deities like Brigid and Mac Og. This is in keeping with the original conception of Dyeus as the god of the totality of the daylit sky, who is thus closely associated with the sun, fire, and light, the father of the goddess of dawn. That the Dagda is a continuation and evolution of this primordial Indo-European deity, I think, is beyond doubt. The difference between figures like Zeus or Jupiter is that his nature is more closely aligned with the daytime sky and fertility, and there is less emphasis with his manifestation of storms or lightning, although it still is present. And in this way, he is more akin to the original conception of the deity, and he's not really involved in administering law. He has not incorporated the role of the youthful warrior and liberator, which remains predominantly the domain of Lugh. One of the earliest sources for the Dagda and Irish myth generally is the taking of the Sidhe. In it, the Dagda is called Dagan. Now, this isn't a mistake of his name or a mistaken spelling. They are equating the Dagda to the ancient Semitic fertility god Dagan, who is second in the pantheon to El. Early Christians knew who this god was, and they equated him with the Dagda. It also says that it was with the Dagda that the sons of Mil first established a treaty with the Tuatha. This is the establishment of the relationship between men and the gods. After this treaty, it is said that the Tuatha helped to preserve the milk and the crops of the sons of Mil. The surviving myths sometimes paint the Dagda in a rather silly light, and this is true of many fertility-related gods and myths. Their sexual organs and appetite is often presented in an over-exaggerated fashion. But it is likewise true that elsewhere he is called a great, glorious, and beautiful god, and furthermore a god of druidism and arcane knowledge. Fertility and magic are closely connected in the ancient world, and it is likely that the Dagda also plays a role in reincarnation, especially considering the nature of his staff or club, and resurrection motifs associated with cauldrons. Some people have wrongly classed the Dagda as a storm god. Now, as he relates to the totality of the daylit bright sky and the cloudy or rainy sky during the daytime, he has some relation with storms, but he is repeatedly linked most to fertility and wealth, much more than combat. He is primarily a magical and priestly figure, not a warrior. Like Lugh, the Dagda is called Samildanach, skilled in many arts, but he is a priestly magical role related to procreation and wealth primarily. The Dagda looms large in folklore likely because of his importance to peasants in his relation to fertility of the soil and the germination of crops. These are things Lugh is also associated with, but from a different angle. Lugh is a militant protector of the trees and fields, and a liberator of the waters and the light, whereas the Dagda is the fertile magical power of the Great Father. For an example, let's look at the three treasures of the gods. A sword for Nuada, representing nobility and law-giving. A spear for Lugh, representing the martial force identical to the symbol of Mars. And the Dagda, with a cauldron representing wealth and food in abundance, but also regeneration and magic. Contrary to Dumazil, this triad is not equated to first, second, and third functions, but in some way is a tripartite division of a first function. Nuada is a judicial king, Lugh is a warrior king, and Dagda is a priestly or magical king. In some lists of the gods, Nuada does not feature, and instead it is Lugh, Dagda, and Ogma. In this version, Dagda is typically listed as king of the gods. This triad features in the Irish version of the Historia Britannorum, the wooing of Eden, and the taking of the Sidhe. That the Dagda was not primarily a storm god is also evidenced by the existence of Lugh, whose appearance is necessary for the liberation of the gods and the freeing of the wealth of the Dagda, which may represent the fertilizing rains or simply material abundance or harvest. That the Dagda's power generates and brings about the harvest or the rains is clear, but Lugh seems to be the embodiment of the liberating force or the defensive force which secures it, frees the waters, or dispels menacing cloud demons. The structure of the myth itself is that a young and skillful war leader is necessary for the freedom and defense of the society. Dagda is enslaved, his wealth confiscated, and he is forced to labor in the soil like a peasant, connecting him to his divine function in a demeaning way. Even his food is taken from him. Interesting also is that it is the Dagda that Lugh sends to converse and delay the Fomorians. Thus, Dagda is somehow the most suitable one for this parley, perhaps for several reasons. He is universally presented as deceptive and extremely clever and manipulative, but he is also called the King of Speech, and it is with him that humans first established a treaty with the gods. However, he may also be related to the god Dawn, and thus be seen in a kind of chthonic light. The Dagda is truly a great god with expansive powers and range of influence. He is Samildanach, he is all-wise, and he is a very ancient deity. He is the continuation of the Sky Father, almost certainly, which largely keeps to his original conception, not as a god of law, but as a god of fertility, agriculture, a god of the sky and weather, life and death, and the celestial sphere that causes the changing of the seasons. In the third redaction of the Laurgavala Erin, it said that the Dagda and Lugh fought together against Delbaith, Elitha, and Bress at the Battle of Moytura. And not only is the Dagda a representative of magic, but he's also a representative of strength and power. Ultimately, he is a celestial god of the highest order. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting and informative. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, check out the Patreon page so that you can request videos like this for yourself. Gurv Mila Magat as Jack Agus Marigoni Shas Gohard.